Okay, good morning, everyone. We are so excited. Yesterday's presentations left us really energized. I think we heard from a broad spectrum across, everything from journalism to psychology to history to even a sort of dreaming of what hair could have done throughout history if we'd approached it differently. We have a whole array of presenters today. We're going to keep the same format, so please keep your questions until the end, and each presenter will have time to interact with the audience. We'll bring the mic around. We are on live stream today, so everything you say is being recorded for posterity. Everything. We are going to kick off with Lynnette Gilbert, an art education professor. Any other introductory morning thoughts, Dr. Ellington?
No, I was just so honored. I mean, yesterday's event was so good. The conversations were so good and so needed. And I just appreciate the participation and everybody coming out and just being so open and honest, and wanting to tell their stories. And so we're going to continue to have an amazing time today. We're going to start with Dr. Lynnette Gilbert. Is Dr.
Yes,
Okay. All right. Dr. Lynnette Gilbert represents her love for art and gift of creativity in an engaging and meaningful way. By way of Arkansas Tech, where she currently oversees the art education program, Dr. Gilbert is presenting her original works of art that illustrates the complexities of cultural awareness as it relates to Black hair as identity. Her mixed media approach will also be presented with a sample lesson plan. Dr. Lynnette Gilbert.
Either way, you can put that in. Is this on? Can you all hear? I don't hear it, but it's not the mic. Let me check that too.
All right, well, good morning. I'm sorry, I'm running. My mom and my sister's here, and I was like, it's too much at one time, so.
Is it working now?
I feel like I'm louder than usual. Yes.
Okay.
So my name is Dr. Lynnette Gilbert. I'm the Associate Professor of Art Education. I'm going to present Crown and Glory, which is actually a title for a series that I'll talk to about the end. But a little bit about myself. I have 19 years teaching experience. 15 of those years were with my high schoolers. And honestly, if I didn't move to higher ed, I probably would have stayed with my high schoolers. I tell everybody my great days outweighed my bad days every time. But even as a teacher, as I was doing demos and talking about projects, it was important to show my identity. It was for myself, the Black aesthetics, representation, and just for all of my students. I also really love employing culturally responsive teaching practices with them when I teach. So when I do my pre-service teachers, I don't care who you look like, I'm going to show you how to do this within your classroom, okay? My artwork is a reflection of my faith, experience, beauty, presence, value, and just being a Black woman. I love color and textures. Even when I'm wearing a neutral palette, I'm going to find a way to bring in some color. I'm fascinated with forms of identity, especially identifying being a Black woman. Colors and textures are a constant presence, and as I evolved as an artist and as an educator, I realized those colors and textures were also part of my identity and how I related that to hair. How I approached textures became very important as I navigated closer to my identity. And this is one of the earlier pieces that I did, still thinking about textures. It's in my meantime piece, because I felt like I was always evolving and turning and changing. And so she has these butterfly wings, and they're kind of immersed in her back, and that's tissue paper. Anything that gives me texture, I'm going to try to use it. So you got hot glue, tissue paper, then I started just playing around with other things that can give texture-esque things within the pieces. I started doing these small drawings. When you're in the PhD program, it is stressful. I tell everybody it is a 4-year hazing period. And so in that period, I was also trying to figure out who I was as a woman. And through that time, it always came back to hair. So these are very small drawings, and I say 2014 to 2020 because I would start them, come back, trying to figure out ways to employ color and at the same time using these little tonal properties just to still have that essence of being a woman of color, but through the textures of paper. And then it just exploring all the different styles and textures that I see. My hair, it's been a battle, but I love hair. And so it never stopped me from saying, oh, your hair is gorgeous. What are you doing? It never, ever stopped me. This is Seeker. At this point, I started reflecting on my personal relationship with hair. I began exploring textures through acrylic mediums. I can talk about paint all day, but these mediums have sands and pearls and gawk, and it just gives you all these different textures. And I thought about the different patterns and textures of hair. And yesterday they talked about all the different hair grades and ratings, and I never understood it. Someone told me I was 4C. I said, I'm an ALG, because whatever you say 4G is doing, my hair is not doing that. So that's just where I am. And then at this point, I just decided, hair is also my storyteller. It's gonna start telling stories. So 2015, also I love surfaces. I was at the Tulu Art Colony, and there's this big piece of board nobody was using. And I was like, I see her in this board. I need for her to come out. So I started exploring texture again, the complexity of the natural crown. And these complexities they're happy, they're sad, they're joyful, they're, oh, what are we doing today? But at the same time, with all that happening, they're beautiful. And so I started using shredded paper. So her hair is full of just shredded paper. And again, me in color, I didn't want it just to be a black fro. Purple is that color of royalty, of dignity, and she is just present for me. She is just present for me. And also, I love paper, period, and so you'll start seeing me putting in little things like in the earring or little torn pieces of paper to also let those stand out. So if you met me yesterday, I had big earrings. Today, big earrings. It's just part of who I am. One day I'm gonna do an evolution of me and my earrings, how I went from itty bitty to almost as big as my head. But it's just part of who I am as I start identifying through those things. As women, especially black women, have many layers, and they're often misunderstood and devalued. So this is when I started saying, we're getting criticized and not seen as what we are worth. And so I hope that I'm starting to change that narrative through my works of art by presenting black women, and I always see myself in these pieces. At one point, I had all those colors in my hair. This is Shine, Isaiah 61. Again, the different various colors of hair. Sometimes when I use the texture of the shredded paper, I just make it a mess sometimes, because sometimes it's not tamed. Sometimes this is about the freedom of the hair. And the light, the more I painted, this light just shined on her. And I saw that glory and that presence of God upon her. And so I went through, and Isaiah 61 is one of my favorite verses, and it's just let the light of the Lord shine upon you. And so this is that piece. And I also started doing this pouring where I would outline the figure, and then I would start pouring a medium, and it's a very spiritual, because you just kind of let it do what it do. So I don't have any control of it other than the colors, and then the colors start to merge and merge and do different things. Black Queen Rising, I did this one in 2020. It was my response. We're at that height of pandemic, things were happening, and when Breonna Taylor, it did something to me, and I've never been the one to stand on a rooftop with a megaphone, but my voice was through my art. But then I realized I wanted to talk about how that affects the youth, how not seeing us is an issue. Why is it that my niece shared a video with me shortly. They did an exercise. A little black girl came out in front, No one asked her who she belonged to, if she was lost. Then they switched another little girl out with her, same attire, but she was Caucasian. People ran to her in droves. And I was like, that we're here. We need to be made aware of these types of things. And so that when I heard about Breonna Taylor, then I started just doing research. And if you'll see, the mask has the names of black women, trans women that have been killed by officers. And it was important for me to have their names and the year. It was important for me to have it on a young lady. And, you know, I was thinking about rough and tough in my Afro puffs. You know, that's a sign of resistance and strength. But I wanted to be in a youthful stance. And so these patterns show up in my hair. And then if you notice, right, I do have a clicker, at least a pointer. I did. Okay. I use my acrylic here just to see the textures of when we pull our hair back to those puffs. And then I also saw the freedom within the puffs. And I let some of the newspaper shredding show through, and then there's still hints of colors. And then I also make sure there's gold present because of royalty and the importance of that. And then the textures, again, me and paper, I love it. And then I also play with patterns here because for me, the patterns that show up in other areas also a representation of the patterns and textures of hair. My Crown and Glory series is a collagraph print series. In my heart, I'm a printmaker, I'm not, but in my heart, I am. I just love the medium. And collagraph was one of those things that I could create in my personal space in a very small amount of time. So I didn't need a big studio. It was all recycled materials. It became a series in 2018. I believe the 11-year-old out of Louisiana, she had just got her braids freshly done. And then the school told her she couldn't come in because of her hair. And that just messed with me because it angered me to know that, and I've had my hair struggles, and that's part of it. Like, I'm already struggling in my own, and the day that I feel so beautiful and accepted with my hair, you tell me I can't do it. And so I said, let me see what I can do just to bring awareness and beauty and just taking it to a very simple form of beauty. And so these things are looking at things that society identifying us as if we're unworthy, ugly, devalued. I want to celebrate that and honor that with that natural crown, however that is. And I use recycled material. So these are all, this one here is either recycled mat board or cardboard. And I started peeling things away so you can see the different textures. And you'll notice that many of them I will put the big earrings in because I'm always throwing those in as my personal identity as I go through these journeys. This is Afrotastic. Then I did Lockitude, and this was before I even decided to lock my hair. I was going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, trying to get knowledge about it, trying to learn. And then finally I was just like, let me just do it because this is what I want to do, and I'm so happy I did. It was part of that freedom within my hair as well. And so again, and I also like to go out of the surface. I like the images to seem like they're moving in, you're getting engaged in within the space. And then I play around with layering. So same plate, but I came back and I added layers of color on top to enhance and just give her just that extra shine and glow. Then we have Bantubo, and we talked about Bantu knots. And when I did it, I kept saying beautiful, bountiful blessings. Beautiful, bountiful blessings. Beautiful Bantu blessings. And so for me, that's just a blessing. And so every year I just add more and more to it. Refine Resistance, I did that one in 2020, again, at that height of the protest, the pandemic. And I feel like she's very dignified in this piece. And I played around with layering the cardboard in different places so the textures could look different. Because, like I said, I was in the 4C, I'm an LG. I'll have straight coils here, a kink here. My hair never did a twist out ever. Like, I'm very envious of your twist out. Because I had a twist down. I always looked like I had like a new version of a Jerry curl after I tried to do a twist out. But I rolled with it. But that resistance and then being refined within that resistance. And then I started the plate. If you know about monoprints, they all have the same underlying surface. So I started these prints where they all have the same underlining figure. And then I went again playing with paper, patterns, and textures. I put masks on them, but I called this protective styles, and we talked a little bit about that on yesterday, and how we do these things to protect our hair within the process of the elements. For me, I always got braids in the summertime. Living in Houston, Mississippi, no, it was not happening. So a protective style was very important for me to maintain my hair. And what I did differently here was the textures I created with shredded paper as well as cardboard. The centerpiece, I added more paper on top of it so the textures of the hair can illuminate and come out. I'm probably going to come back to this one because I also want to add text to it, to these different, what are we protecting our identity, protecting self, protecting words. So I want to bring those things in. So this series is continuously growing. Right now, that's where we are. If you see me next year, who knows? And then this is my in progress. I'm calling it Wrapped In. Again, I plan on playing with text. And all of them will be profile pieces. All of them will be 6x6s. My mom tells me all the time, you can just frame this as its own. That's a piece of artwork by itself. So my plates are very important to me. And that's the beauty of collagraphs. You have these plates. And then if I don't want to print anymore, I can print them as their own. But the concept is they'll all be in these very regal profile poses, and there'll be a wrap somewhere within their hairstyles. Again, this is all cardboard and mat board. I'm introducing my earrings back. This is like little balled up pieces of paper so you can get the little bit of nap at the back of the head, because that's that little kink area, that's part of it. And my plan is to do these series of prints on a large texture piece as if it's a fabric piece of wrap. And then I'll have the small window glasses so she's kind of float in the frame, and then I'll have the text underneath it, wrapped in love, wrapped in power, wrapped in excellence. So this is where I'm going with my collagraphs, and hopefully it will resonate with more, especially the youth. I just see it so many. I have 10 nieces and nephews, and how they see themselves, how they represent themselves is so important to me. And I need to show that through my artwork. Oh, that clicker does not work. And so I think I'm good. Yeah, got 5 minutes. Okay. And so because I am the art educator who I am, I wanted to employ a way to discover hair identity through a lesson plan. So I co-authored an article which I did share with Dr. Kathy Brown from UNT. We shared our story. I paired this lesson plan based on our narratives as well as the research that was done by Dr. Brown. And I created this instructional resource mainly for 7 through 12, but really, if you're an educator, you can adapt. You can adapt to any grade level. And I share this also with my pre-service teachers. And know this, that the only color in my classroom at Arkansas Tech is me. This is my 3rd year, and I still don't have one student of color within art education. Within the entire department, there might be 3. So I know the importance of representation and being seen and being your authentic self within that. So my hair story is a mixed media art lesson that presents a perspective of storytelling around the positionality of hair. We're created in a response of self-discovery through situating hair to connect personal truths. And when I teach this lesson, I teach it from a black hair perspective. So it doesn't matter the demographics within my classroom. We're all learning about the textures and hair and identity. This is designed to explore various medias, to examine the complexities of the textures, movement, and medium. So this is why I didn't want to just say, oh, it's a painting, it's a print. I want it to be mixed medium. I want the students to go in and discover these different mediums and how does that relate to them and their identity through hair. So from hats, head wraps, glorious ball crowns to straight soft curls and kinks, I just want these textures in between to just hold the different stories of culture, community, influence, and identity. And when I teach my high schools, we talk about what does community look like? What does culture look like? Because for them, it looks in different ways. These kids are being raised and they have access to so much more than what I did. So they're seeing more, they're experiencing more, they're feeling a lot more. And they have a heaviness upon them, so these types of lessons help them to just explore themselves. And so through the objective, they're going to discover and reimagine self, investigate hair as a metaphor, develop the ability to communicate about hair, increase awareness and understanding of hair through viewing and discussing works of art by different artists and subject matters, and then they'll create that mixed media piece. Some artists, exemplars, Rebecca Balling, who was out of Houston, Texas. This girl is bad, I just want y'all to know. She is awesome. Her mother was a hairstylist, so she spent hours and hours in there with her mother. And it was important for me to show feel good to my students because you have the male perspective of hair as well. And so I wanted to show those pieces. Also another artist, Jessica Spence. I love Fearless, Fearless. The attitude, even though the presence, we can't see her eyes, but we see her reflection in that mirror. Honey, she's feeling herself. She knows she's got this. And then the roller set just took me back to those hard pink rollers that how we slept, I still don't know. Like this, exactly, exactly. And then another artist, he's out of Atlanta, Jamal Barber, wonderful printmaker. His Identity series, I really want him to continue this, but it's an older series. But I love that he stripped away the eyes and the identity was all about the hair. And then he also played around with these textures. So he has like 7 or 8 different numbers of Afrolicious, different colors, different textures within the hair, within the background. And these are all lithograph or wood prints. Not lithograph, I'm sorry, linoleum block prints or wood prints. And then Delita Martin, you cannot go wrong when you're talking about hair and identity. And I just love Delita. If you never get a chance to, you gotta just see her art talks because they're so profound. Oh, that's right. You have the smaller piece, Love, Love, Love. And she talks about the stitching because of her grandmother. And she also does all these added little textures, the representation. And Trinity is one of my favorites because we have these 3 different styles that's happening here. Even in here and how she brought the extra textures behind. And so this is just my exemplar. The only thing that's missing, I forgot to put her glasses on, so honey, she can't see. But the mixture in it is, I use linoleum block prints to make the fingerprints. Chalk pastels, acrylic paint, I use alcohol marker. I purposely use materials that don't mesh well together because that happens. Product doesn't mesh well with everyone's hair. So that was important for me. And then the identity of it was the fingerprints. I used a pathway stencil because of me finding myself through this journey. And the fingerprints actually kind of construct her hair, if you notice. And then the emergence of the hair. The hair manifests into the fingerprints, self also emerges, and the continuous journey of self-discovery. And that's all that I have for you. That's my fan club right there.
So we can take a few questions from responders. I guess I'll just say you're curating the next exhibition, it looks like. She's already pulling together.
Not a question, but okay. Not a question, but what you had mentioned in your presentation, being a Black professor in front of a group of white students and not a student of color in your class, I've definitely experienced that as well. I know how difficult it can be. I went to Ghana, and that's actually where I met Dr. Isel, who is sitting in the back. And I got an opportunity to go to a fashion school. It's called Radford College. And they had a presentation for me there, and I got a chance to meet a lot of the students. I actually got up, the lady who was the director for the program asked me to get up and just speak a little bit about myself and who I was. So the students showed me their work, and then after they showed me their work, then they invited me to come up and just speak a little bit. I stood up and looked around the room. There were about 50 students. There was about maybe 10 faculty, and everyone in the room was black. I just broke down and started crying. Because it's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
It really is hard.
It's hard.
I never experienced anything like that in my life, and it gave me a different perspective of what it meant for me to be an educator. It really did.
That why.
So good morning. I want to make a comment first and then ask two questions. The first, yesterday we learned a lot about the influence of the Moors in terms of head wraps and turbans, and I wear wraps a lot, so I was very glad to see, you know, the work that you're doing there. And I'm going to ask the simple question: do you wear the wraps?
Oh, yes.
And it's really exciting to see this reflected, you know, in your artwork. And I think it's something that that we need to talk a little bit more about at some point, because we were able to go into the exhibit and you can see enslaved women, you know, with their heads wrapped for a different reason, you know, and so it's really good to see these connections. And I guess the other question is your work for sale?
Short answer, yes.
Okay.
And I am working on getting my website up so more people can have access to it. The more I build, like I said, my sister is my biggest fan club, and she's my pusher. She's my pusher. She's been telling me for years. She's like, these people need to see this. You need to show this. My mom is the same way. He was an artist, and it's hard to fill the shoes of your mother, who's also
Create your own footprint.
Yeah.
Create your own footprint.
And it took me a while to find that lane, and now that I'm in it, I gotta ride the wave. So absolutely.
So the last comment is that it is really good, because I think today we have a couple of sessions where we're beginning to talk about the self-identity and hair in terms of children, you know, our youth. And we see some really amazing things done with youth hair, and especially men now, you know, in terms of the cuts they have in their hair, the designs. I just think it's an amazing thing. And as a former educator, I love to see this connection that's being offered to our youth. So thank you.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Great presentation. I knew it would be. But I do like the fact that, because I'm not in the art world like my mom and my sister, so I get like a front row seat to all the lessons and everything. People assume, you know, because your family members are artists, you're an artist, and it's not the case. However, I have grown to love and appreciate art because of my family. And so seeing your exhibit, it shows me like how things are changing. You know, because even growing up, we did have this idea about what hair should look like. And as we know, recently, legislation has passed the Crown Law for the whole United States, which is sad, because one, we should not have to have a law for us to be free and wear our hair, but it also raises that awareness that, okay, now we can be expressive in how we wear our hair. And I know that growing up, and you know how I do my hair, you know, I'll go from curly to straight to braids to whatever, but it's beautiful to see me and my different styles reflected in artwork, in the media, in everything, you know. And it's like embracing something that we used to think was so different, because, you know, back in the day, natural styles were frowned upon. But now, you know, it used to be if you wanted a natural style, you can go and get it done for $20. But now, that people are embracing natural, it's like more stylists and everything, they're out there and they're able to do your hair and all that. So I just really appreciate how we can see ourselves now. And it's a different variety. So now our kids can go to school, you know, with their poof ball and not feel different, not feel like, you know, they're odd, you know. So I really do appreciate what you're doing, because you are educating me as well about embracing our hair and not being ashamed of who we are. It's like kind of taking our culture back, you know.
I have a question. Yes, and I have a question, Dr. Gilbert. Can you tell us what needs to happen next in the field of art education? Because you're kind of representing that space here today. So, what needs to come next?
What needs to come next is we need to continue to do the work. Like I said, even though my demographic is really me, I am the person of color, diversity rings very loudly in my classroom. Learning how to, in order to be able to teach it, you got to embrace it, you got to learn about it, and you've got to be willing to be doing the work. And when I go to conferences, I let them know you got to do the work. You can't be embarrassed. You can't be afraid of who you are. And that's where it starts. My upbringing was a little different. With my mother being an artist, with me going to the HBCU, with me being embraced with an art collection that looked like me. So when I came into the classroom, and I was like, oh, this will never do. We're going to look at Bearden today. You know, and so that's what needs to happen. We need to show this diverse range of things and we got to continue to do the work. And things like this, we still need to be present. Sometimes for me as an art educator, even though I have my doctorate, sometimes I'm like, I'm a teacher. I'm not really a researcher, but I research through my work. And that needs to be seen more so within the classroom as well. And it doesn't matter who you are, what your background is. You need to be present in it. We learn, we grow, we expand.
Hi, hello, what a powerful presentation. My name is LaDosha Wright, and I'm a cosmetologist. And working behind the chair, I love the language that you use in your presentation. Can you speak to your choice of words and how you inspire? Because to me, as a cosmetologist, words are very damaging and it can make our jobs very difficult. So can you just share with us why and how you chose the beautiful words to express your work of art?
Some of the words, as soon as they popped up, I was like, okay, LaDosha would say that.
Yeah.
So like Afro-licious and, you know.
The bond
Well, for me, it was all about tying it in with something meaningful and beautiful and how I felt when I either saw it, if I saw it on my niece, or I saw someone passing. So for me, like for Bountiful, it's just a blessing, and it's such a rich history behind that. So those are the things that I reach for with my language within it. And for me, visual vocabulary is my culture, my identity, you know. So when I teach a value scale, black number 1. Black is not at number 9. It's not at the bottom. We starting with the richness because it is all color. And then we trickle down to nothing. Texture, the same thing. Pattern, the same thing. All that is my culture and my language. And so I look for positive in everything that I do. That's how I express it. That's how I attack it with my students. And that's how I want them to approach, because language is very important.
Do you find that like a challenge when you've got it's such a mass movement and that number system and you're just bold by yourself, even with that statement that you just made? So do you find that as you're working it like a struggle to say it, or does it just come out of you like that?
Now it just comes out of me. When I first started teaching, it was a little bit of a struggle because when I started teaching high school, I could count the black faces in my classroom. Of course, that changed through the years, but even though I was showing them, I have a seat at the table. Not only do I have a seat at the table, my ancestors made that table. So this is my cane. Move over. This is me. And so, but it did take a little while to build up on it. But then after a while, you have to be your authentic self at the end of the day. And I can't expect that of my students if I don't do the same thing.
Our next presenter is Camaron Loritts. She is a North Carolina native that enjoys gardening, binge watching documentaries and series, and being an amateur TikToker. She is the Assistant Director for the Center of Research, Engagement, and Collaboration in African American Life at Wake Forest University, and a second-year PhD student in Educational Leadership Cultural Foundations program at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. This presentation will look at the perception of Black women's hair during the Civil Rights Movement within higher education, and with special attention to the afro as a symbol of resistance and Black power. Camaron Loritts.
Thank you. I'm trying to adjust some of these things. Okay. How's everybody? Good morning. Good morning. Okay, so my name is Camaron Loritts, and I am happy to share some things I've been connecting. I will say this is ongoing research, so I am completely open to feedback and thoughts on this. So, is my hair too radical to you? And so today, we're going to be looking at how college campuses are a primary location for the civil rights movement. Then we'll be moving into how that was also a pivotal time for Black aesthetics, and then moving to how does that overlap and what does that look like together, and then looking at ways that we can, control our own narratives and things that we can do moving forward. Okay, so, just like the church with being a staple meeting place and a ground for the civil rights movement, college campuses were also a meeting place for the civil rights movement, especially for young people. When you go to college, you're just, ready to get out of the house, be free, be this new type of person that wants to challenge things. You're learning new ideas. And so when you're here in this college space with other folks, you're now learning and questioning what all of these things mean. And so you're looking at things and you're like, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. And then so how can we do something about it? And so you couple this with this time of the civil rights movement, and I like to call it the perfect storm for young Black activists. So you have protests, you have sit-ins, you have the NAACP meetings, planning meetings, all of these things happening and stemming on college campuses. And so I live in Greensboro currently, and so at North Carolina A&T, you have the Greensboro 4 sit-in. And for anybody that doesn't know, on April 1st, 4 young Black men walked downtown Greensboro to the Woolworth store that was segregated at the time and demanded to be fed. And that kind of started a catalyst for different sit-ins and movements in North Carolina. And I also want to highlight the very next day, ladies from Bennett College, right around the corner, also joined them the next day and thereafter. So shout out to the Bennett Bells. And like I said, I do currently live in Greensboro, and the original Woolworth store is still there. They've turned it into the International Civil Rights Museum, and it's super dope. They have the original counter and the seats and stuff like that. So anytime you're in Greensboro, hit me up. I'll take you out there. I love to go. But are there any other college campuses that we want to highlight or just throw into the space that protests took place that really kind of sit with you that we want to throw into the space? Yes. 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 Kent State. Yes. All right. Anywhere else? All right. So all of these beautiful places, Black people are coming together and questioning things and highlighting things and really changing the way that we view ourselves. And so this is one of my favorite videos. Anybody seen this video just by already? Okay, fantastic. You haven't seen it. Okay. So this is one of my favorite videos. Like I've said, this is Kathleen Cleaver. She was one of the most notable Black Panther sisters, just a dope sister. So she organized the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee at Fisk University, where she actually met Eldridge Cleaver, and that's how she kind of integrated into the Black Panther party. And so I'm going to show this video, and I forgot that I made it into a PDF, so I think it should still work if I click it. Okay, we're going to make it shake. Hope there's no... Okay, we're going to start this over.
This brother here, myself, all of us were born with our hair like this, and we just wear it like this because it's natural, because the reason for it, you might say, is like a new awareness among black people that their own natural appearance, physical appearance is beautiful and is pleasing to them. For so many, many years, we were told that only white people were beautiful. Only straight hair, light eyes, light skin was beautiful, and so black women would try everything they could, straighten their hair, lighten their skin, to look as much like white women. This has changed because black people are aware, and white people are aware of it too, because white people now want natural wigs. They want wigs like this. Dig it? Isn't it beautiful? All right.
Black is beautiful. Bring it. Said I want it free. Bring it.
Can you dig it? All right. Oh, shucks. Now how I get back to it? Minimize. Minimize. Oh, there we go. Yep. Fantastic. So that video, I love that video, and I watch it all the time. I use it in essays because it truly encapsulates the shift that happens during the civil rights movement. Black people became black people, and I'm not saying, we wasn't black before, because we've always been black. Our skin's been black, our skin's been brown. But there was a shift in the way that we visually expressed ourselves. And so now that we wasn't using the white man's perm, we weren't assimilating anymore, and we weren't doing these unhealthy things to our hair, and we were now not altering ourselves to align with those Eurocentric features. And so now, during that time, the afro and being natural, it was more noticeable. It was a visual. We were embracing our blackness, embracing whatever curl, whatever coil kind of came out of our head, and that visually aligned with our roots in Africa. And so that became a visual form of resistance, and it became politicized in a new way. And so we talked about during this conference a lot of ways that it's become politicized, and I argued that it became a radical statement. And I use the word radical a lot because it's one of my favorite words. And so according to Merriam-Webster, radical means growing from the root of a plant or designed to remove the root of a disease. I'm gonna say that again because I like that. So radical means growing from the root of a plant or designed to remove the root of a disease. And so hair growing from the root of the plant, Dr. Afia said last night, Africa has a way of showing back up. And so I feel like the way the afro showed back up was a reflection of that and came to remove the disease that we were not beautiful and deserving and worthy before. And so when we kind of connect some of these pieces together, it really makes us have a critical eye to the way that hair has showed up on college campuses, and especially during the civil rights movement from then until now. And so what does all of this mean? And like I said, these are some of the questions that I have because this is still ongoing research, and it can be a little difficult when you're doing archival work and trying to look back at, perceptions and things of that nature. So yeah, a critical analysis, we need to kind of look deeper into the role of black hair that has on college campuses, because college is a time of exploration and expression. So how is black hair policed, politicized, celebrated, and how is community built through all of that? And that really stems from that video where you see those people forming together on that college campus, and they're celebrating each other, they're singing, they're dancing, they're doing their thing, and they're not being ashamed about it, how they previously felt. And so how does that also shift our identity while we're in college? And that can also provide many insights on various fields with psychology, with how we approach education, art education, and things of that nature. How does hair, while we're on college campuses, shift the way we approach our identity and beliefs. And so then using our hair as a form of resistance, what ways has the afro and the way that the afro was used as a form of resistance still show up today? We talked about how in media and journalism during this conference that hair has been a form of resistance and pushback. And so what does that look like in higher education spaces today? And what are the ways that college students still use their hair as a form of resistance today? And so that is the end of my presentation. I want to thank you. And like I said, thank you. This is ongoing research, so I'm open to questions, and I welcome them at this time. Yeah, we have a question in the back. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, I will come right to you, Brittany.
She was ready. I appreciate the enthusiasm.
What I was about to say before I hand the mic to Brittany, when you were just asking about what does it look like today, I'm a little nervous from what I heard yesterday about people talking about the Jerry curl coming back. Oh my God, please don't.
I don't know, Gen Z might make it cute, you never know it. you never know.
But can they make it not wet? Go for it. This was such a great presentation. Thank you for this, Camaron. I would love to hear you speak about the politics of black hair across different school settings. What does this mean for the elementary and middle school student versus the college student versus the high school student, even thinking about proms and such, and how might that vary across geographical settings? So this hair in the South versus this hair in the North, or even PWIs versus HBCUs, or are we all doomed as we navigate all these institutions that are implicit or complicit in white supremacy or respectability politics at least?
That sounds like a dissertation topic.
Listen, it does.
Yes, it does.
Can you write that down, Brittany, in that document we talked about? I think, as I know that answer is complicated as we look at the different areas in school with elementary versus middle school. Middle school is such a weird time. I don't know for y'all, it's a weird time for me. You're kind of figuring yourself out. And then moving into high school with prom and then college after that and the politics of that. And so I think we have to look at, with elementary schools, who is, and middle schools, who is performing the hair. And so I think we have to have parents as are part of that conversation, because unfortunately children don't have that, I don't feel like have that much autonomy. And so how can we empower parents to push back on that rhetoric as well? And then prom, that's interesting because, and you can even see it with school pictures and things of that nature, how little girls we kind of all got our hair straightened for picture day, and then outside of that we had the braids and the things of that nature. And so I think we have to just empower and kind of change the narrative, how we've been doing this entire time, changing the narrative and really pushing back. We understand and know the politics that come with it, and that's why we have the Crown Act coming up, but really looking at how we can empower the youth to have that autonomy before they get to college, because once they get to college, that shifts and they start to explore and they start to try things that are new. And so just kind of pushing back, and I believe in empowerment through autonomy. And so I think that would kind of be my answer towards that, but I would love to explore that more. Yeah.
Any other questions for Camaron?
And this is right in my face. Okay.
Thank you for this presentation. It was great. I mean, I have two kind of like semi-formulated questions. So one is really if you can speak more about kind of like the tensions themselves within kind of like, right, these activists, because not all of them went onto the Afro. Some of them that even went with Afro felt very kind of like not comfortable with that, right? And and we have like example like Diane Nash and other who kind of like still maintained, right, the respectability look. And how is it kind of like, right, and maybe how much, and kind of like going off to the second question is kind of like, right, if thinking about this intertensions in the 60s and 70s and how they are played today, because much of their, right, much of that hair aesthetics was also connected to their activism and came out of their activism. And I feel like today, maybe not in all campuses, but for like in my experience with students, it's like it's really hard for them to even think of like marching in the streets, right? They're doing a lot on TikTok and other platform, but kind of like those direct action, that how kind of like you translate this aesthetics of resistance when you're not doing kind of like the political action that came along with it.
That's a great question. I'm gonna tackle the question for your first question. There was a lot of people didn't like the Afro, and we don't talk about that as much. Everybody was not jiggy with the Afro. Everybody was not, letting that all hang out. And so they're actually in the one of my favorite books, The Hair Story. It talks about a woman that purposely was in the Black Panther. I believe she was in the Black Panther Party. But she wore her hair straight to show that you do not have to wear an Afro to still think that Black is beautiful and still participate in that movement. And so there is a tension, because sometimes embracing Blackness can be, and moving yourself away from that assimilation can be seen as a step in the wrong direction by some folks. And I think that still happens today. And we've seen that in the way that we look at respectability politics. We've seen that with the Will Smith and the Chris Rock situation, and the way that Black people were kind of split on it, and how we kind of feel about it in terms of respectability politics. And so, to answer your second question, I don't believe we have to have a certain hairstyle to be a part of empowering and in the movement. But I think what comes into play is not devaluing or being negative about the way someone wears their hair. If someone wants to wear an Afro, don't be negative about it. If you want to wear your hair straight, cool. If someone wants to wear their hair in an Afro, also cool. Let's celebrate everything. And so I think that can be the answer, that we're always so black or white, and we have to choose one or the other. And it doesn't always have to be like that. We can celebrate both sides. So, yeah, I hope that answered it. Thank you.
We talked about that yesterday too. It's such a difficult decision to make. What to do and how to wear. But it does not mean, as you just said, that you can't be, a part of the resistance.
Right.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Anybody?
Yeah.
Your hair becomes your identity, and you have to change the narrative. We have to change how people approach us. If you why are you even asking me about my hair? But if you want to know, I like it like this.
That's right.
Just like you like your hair, like my coworkers, they get on me all the time because they're like, "Well, Mary," because I haven't had a relaxer in like 10 years.
Yeah.
And I watched that. I watched the Chris Rock hair, and when he melted that can, that's kind of when I decided. Well, I can't say at that moment I decided not to, but it did make you think. But the reason why I started to wear my hair natural or not get a perm anymore, relaxer anymore, was because I wanted to keep my illusion alive, which meant I was wearing sew-ins and quick weaves, which is a straight look, and I still wear, but I didn't want to expose my natural hair. But then after a while, I was like, I just don't want a relaxer anymore. And so they're like, well, Mary, your natural hair is really beautiful. Why do you cover it up? And I'm like, well, I like my crochet. I like my braids. I like to do what I want to do with my hair, just like you like to do what you want to do with your hair.
That's right.
It doesn't have to be table talk. You wear yours, let me wear mine, and let's keep going. It shouldn't say defiant. It shouldn't say resistance. It just says me. And that's how we need to get that conversation directed in that, but it becomes an argument, or it becomes, you defending yourself.
Right.
And we shouldn't have to do that, because like we talk about other people, they can wear their hair and don't have to defend themselves.
Yeah, right.
They do just as much stuff to their hair as we do to ours, and that'll be a sign of beauty on one end, but on our end, it's too much.
Right.
So,
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I think it's been an interesting conversation and presentation. Yes. Similarly, I did a study on hairstyles as a symbol of resistance in Ghanaian senior high schools. And in that, I was looking at how an arts educator who doubles as a cartoonist, how he has presented this in the newspapers, national newspapers. So I think it's an interesting topic. Great, great, great. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have sent it to you, so
please,
see, yeah.
please, yeah. I'm trying to figure out what this dissertation is gonna look like. So y'all pray for me.
Yeah, that's great.
Any last comments for Cameron? Okay.
About how do we remove or eliminate tension, between these different areas? It's through participation in conferences or symposiums like this. It's through seeing you in a classroom. It's seeing you writing about this. And when we stand before young people, and when we stand and share what this black hair means in terms of our self-identity, it begins to resonate among our people as a whole. We need to see ourselves in people like you, in artwork like yours, in the work that you're doing at the dissertation level, at the symposium that you create here. We grow, we educate ourselves through your presentations. And I need to acknowledge that in case I leave today and don't get a chance to say this before it's over. This is so important in how we grow. And the self-education is so important. And they can't learn it if we don't teach it.
That's right.
And we have to model it, in terms of how we live, in terms of how we share that whole narrative of black hair and self-identity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you so much. I'm getting a little overwhelmed up here because there's not a lot of spaces where we can openly talk about hair, especially, I've had to defend even thinking about hair as a dissertation topic. Luckily, Dr. Fee is on my committee, so, she got my back. But I'm just overwhelmed by the gratitude and the love that's in this room. So I appreciate this. Thank you so much.
And actually, I'm going to say one more thing before, as Dr. Joseph is getting the next presentation up. That was a conversation that I had with Afia as well when she and I first met, and we were talking about how difficult it was for her starting off as an academic and how difficult it was for me starting off as an academic wanting to study hair. And I actually had a mentor of mine who was a researcher. She was one of the most well-known researchers in our field, and she was a black woman. And she told me, she said, I really don't want you to study black hair because I want to make sure that you can get tenure and promotion. And basically what she was trying to say is that in our field, our studying about black identity, black self, black hair is not valued. Our work is not valued. And I'm so happy that I did not listen to what she was saying. Of course I respect and love her, but she was only giving me her perspective because she'd been in the industry for 30 years before I even got there. you know, and so because she experienced that, she didn't want me to experience that. But because of myself and because of Dr. Afia and other scholars, we made a way for other people coming up behind us so that you can be more proud and feel more comfortable, you know, doing that work.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Alix.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen.
Great. And we'll start in just a minute, so
Yeah.
we'll get yes.
Oop, I'm not sure I can share it. Hold on. Okay, that's fine. Can you all see that?
Yes, it's coming up.
Okay. Can you all see when it's full screen?
Yes. There's
Okay,
just be aware that there's a slight lag, probably because Alix is joining us from France. So, bonjour. They say.
Bonjour. Okay.
Well,
tell me when I can start.
Yes. So the tech worked quickly. We'll go ahead and start. Thank you so much for joining us, Alix. Alix is presenting based on her studio. So Alix Bizet's studio is based in Southeast London, and their work centers a critical and analytical approach to design and material research. As they investigate relationships between our bodies, spaces, and media narratives, Bizet also reflects on social and educational programs, whether it be with museums, universities, or local schools. The floor is yours, Alix, and at the end, I'll carry the microphone around for questions.
Okay. So I'm just gonna start by presenting myself. So as you heard, my name is Alix Bizet. So I'm a social designer and I'm based in South London, but originally from France, Paris. And often people ask me, what is social design? And I always refer to the head of my department when I was studying in the Academy Eindhoven, who said to me that actually social design should not exist because all design are social. And in fact, often we forget the social and political aspect of our products, and especially when they are produced, what the consequences they have on the world. So I see design, and I see as designers as a way for me to bring visibility, to ask questions, and to actually shackle a bit the traditional way we see design. So I think in a world of drilling natural resources, exhausted social and political system, it is urgent to reimagine the design discipline itself, to learn how to unlearn by questioning, experimenting, and collaborating, but also to go beyond the obvious world of desirable objects and to start redefining our relationship with our bodies and environment, but also the relation we have with power. So the matter, the origin, the process, and substance as tool for us to understand the materiality, and which materiality is a sense for us to almost to adhere to the larger topic. So my aim as a designer is to explore, challenge, and discuss the boundaries and taboos in societies through something which is really constructed, our bodies. And I often refer to the work of Michel Foucault and his work about biopower and how our bodies actually is like this kind of like representation of all the external forces and biopower, and actually how we can look at our bodies to understand the idea of like identity, rejection, marginalization, and I think with human hair is something especially that you can look at. So I'm gonna just start with like where I started, because often people ask me where did I started, and it started in 2015 when I graduated from Design Academy Eindhoven in Netherlands to a project called Hair Matters. And you will notice that there's a tiny S of matters because I look at hair as a fiber, but because actually human hair is a natural fibers. And if we think about natural fibers, well, we actually automatically think about material and how we can turn a fiber into a material and therefore a garment. But this garment and that, the thing I think often I refer to when I talk about my work, is that not only I'm looking about how we recycle human hair, but also when we look at this material and fiber, we can see that there is a lot of aspect that, not all hair are equal in society. And what is the, considered as beautiful is the effort we do to fit the dominant model, where the dominant model would be like the long, the silky, the straight, the healthy hair, and often where the natural is banished. So Hair Matters is is a collection of free jacket and hairpiece, matching the hair type of the model, and allowing me to talk about diversity. Because when I choose to work with a free model, I actually choose to work about different hair statements. One of the hair statements, for example, of Josie, which is on the left, is like, this kind of really voluminous curly hair. Often she would refer that, people would say about it's untamed, it's not proper for like, professional setting. There's also Lucas who has alopecia. So what does it mean to actually have alopecia in a world where it's all about hair? And through his alopecia, we can talk also about like the idea of losing hair. We also talk about like aging and the fact, many men goes through baldness and women also. And lastly is Josh, when I was talking about Afro hair, people projecting often the political statement that, having natural hair could convey. So Hair Matters is a platform for me to talk about actually discrimination, racism, but also for me it was a way to actually challenge myself and designing with all hair. So actually my statement was to design for and with diversity. And actually looking at this collection, I see my own struggle, because as a child growing up with Afro hair, often I was referred as not fitting in, having a hair which is untamed, not professional enough for like the professional settings, where often people were asking me to have a professional haircut, which I never quite understood. So the whole idea was actually, when actually talking about this project, I talked about my own scale and my own intimacy way to work with hair. But also traveling with this project, I actually encountered a lot of people who struggle with the same issue, and also thinking about like hair as a way for them to be marginalized and pushed out of the society. And that's something that, through my literature, I could see that actually Afro hair is often referred as another hair. And therefore, we have a lot of pressure to fit this kind of dominant and Eurocentric standard to be considered as beautiful and as functional citizen. So moving in 2016 back to London, I started a residency at the Design Museum, which is based in now like High Street, Kensington. And the theme of this residency was open, because the museum was moving from a local neighborhood in South London to a much more high-end place in London, which was High Street, Kensington, and therefore they were worrying about would they actually be accessible for everybody, and would they actually relate to the local life of London. And I think using human hair was a great way for me to start working on this project. So I decided to work with two schools, one in North London, one in South London, and I worked with like the age group of 14 because it was quite interesting. They were still wearing human uniforms. They still have a sense of self, which is in development, testing boundaries for their hairstyle, which is the only place where they actually can experiment freedom of expression. But also, we started to work about the local community, with the local communities. The students were collecting hair from the local barber, bringing it back to the school, and then we would turn these fibers into a garment, a felt, and then we would work from this kind of idea of like looking at the local identities. Working with school for me is really essential for my work. I think that school is a laboratory for life, and often we can talk about the future just working with the younger generation. So this project was called Hair by Hood, so hair by neighborhood, and took the idea of like, looking at the hoodie as a garment. We can talk about the urban landscape, but this landscape then was made with the hair from the local neighborhood, and also working about the identity of those local neighborhoods, because they're really diverse in London. So with the students, we worked about creating different techniques with the hair collected, because not all hair can work the same. And my whole aim with my work is to not damage or alterate the nature of the hair. So making sure that all hair can be identified. So we actually also created a live library collecting hair, creating also a clear statement of transparency for this project, making sure that all hair were labeled. Moreover, just beside the aspect of the materiality and the products, we also make sure about collecting the hair stories of the students who actually participating to this project. So they were really clear that their stories was embedded into this project. And one of the schools in South London actually asked me if I could if I could actually start a residency at this school, because some of the students wanted to continue this project for the A level, for graduating from high school. So I actually started my residency in 2017 with them, and looking at the different concern that they had about the identity of the neighborhood. And one of the things they come up often with was the fast gentrification of Peckham, because Peckham is the fastest gentrified neighborhood in London. And the fact is that they were targeting especially one type of businesses, which was the Afro hairdressers that you can find a lot in Peckham. The council decided to remove them from the high street of Peckham, relocating them into a smaller street, which is actually much hidden street from the high street, and also in a new building. And many hairdressers were complaining about the fact that the building looked very temporary, that it doesn't look like they were considering the fact they would stay. It was just a temporary solution for them. And often they were referring to the idea of the title of this place was called Peckham Palms. Peckham Palm referring to the exotic aspect of Afro hair, and again saying that it was outside the standards, othering Afro hair from the Eurocentric standards, and therefore not seeing Afro hairdressers as a florist businesses that could stay on the high street of Peckham. So I think, we can maybe look at one quick movie that I made with the hairdressers, because as part of this project, I wanted to make sure that the voice of the hairdressers were really represented and featured into the project. So I started to actually collect testimony of the hairdressers. Many of them were really struggling actually to be part of this movie, because they were really afraid that it could have repercussion about them negotiating the lease with the council. So maybe we can just look at it really quickly. Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Hair in Peckham is very deeply ingrained in the culture. Leonard Grove, just around the corner, has been a sort of centre focus for Nigerian community that is very powerful, has a deep heritage in Peckham.
Yeah.
Here's where you care about your beauty and your hair and pride. Because Africans have pride on their hair. They love their hair to look good and different. White mix as well, which is good.
The whole reason to do it is to make someone look nice, make them look better than when they came in, because that's the end result. They come in one way, you need to make them look different. So it is a bit of transforming someone.
some of them I've established here, much more community orientated, with the kids hanging out, playing outside, tumbleweeds blowing down the street. That area by the station has always been quite famous for that.
Somebody look around. Yeah, somebody's gonna walk in and give you stuff. Oh, do you want this? Do you want that? You know, we eat together, we have fun, we have party. There's quite a lot of us, yeah. And if you walk down the road, every single shop is packed. But I must tell you that there's enough air to go around. And obviously, I bring my child to work with me. Where can I do that? And then the young boys that is there too, I don't know. What do you want? The local famous guys, they come out and when they come, it's fun, and they're very nice, they're very polite, and you might see a whole band of them.
I suppose when I moved here in 2004, it felt very much like a sort of small town. That was partly my experience of coming here as an art student. There was a real sense of community, people caring about the area, lots of different communities against each other in a very positive way.
Come on, we make this place. There's so much of us that makes it possible. It doesn't one type of people. It's a whole range of people. It's like that, the very old town. Everybody comes from everywhere in the world.
North, west, just down here to get their hair done.
My son is actually called Malone. He's a mixture. Yeah? So he was around for like 9 years, but kids are also. Yeah? So for me, this is a clue. When we step outside, there's another clue. But we represent everybody. Yeah? There ain't nobody there.
Well, the time is changing a lot. You understand? There's a lot of people moving in, and it's getting more and more expensive to go.
Some shops are being closed down, new ones are being opened up. There's small African shops being closed for places for like parties and stuff. So in about 5 years' time, I really do want to capitalize like a hot zone for hair as much as it is now. There will still be people doing hair, but I wouldn't be as it is right now.
I don't know how it's going to be. I know when you put a lot of people, there's definitely going to be a problem. You understand? I hope I will still be here, whatever happens, you understand? And then I don't get kicked out because of more expensive rents, or you understand?
Because we created, and we move us and put us somewhere, it ain't going to be the same. It's just going to be new building, new places, and maybe it won't even pay because people have nowhere like that to go. The landlord's going to put the rent, they're going to have to, it's going to cost too much, they have to come out there, so I have no idea, but it's going to be different. It's going to be different.
Okay, so part of this movie was also to make sure that, as I said, we're collaborating with the hairdressers and making sure that this statement was part of the project. So the fact is that heritage, which is a play on word on hairy and heritage, is also to make sure that, this Afro hair, which was displaced outside the Highest of Peckham, find a place to be archived. Heritage is a project that aims to explore local talent and local voices from Peckham through the production of workshop, learning new learning network, archive, and knowledge as a tool to actually talk about change and fast changes in the case of Peckham. Working with the student, we decided to not just make another material or making another garment, but actually to almost use the spaces that exist in Peckham to actually bring the community together. So we work as actually our program, working in the Peckham Festival, the Peckham Novels, and we made a symposium at the South London Gallery. And the whole idea was actually to display the school classroom outside the wall of the school, bringing them inside the community, allowing the student to work with local artists, local historian, geographers, but also talking with the community, making sure that the workshop were actually live events. We also had an exhibition was actually moving from the different places and growing for the different events. So as you could see on the images, you have like, for example, local debate, where the student worked with local communities. We also had an exhibition made of the student who used this exhibition as part of an A-level graduating from high school. We also have, for example, also like making a material. So we actually spin the Afro hair collected in Peckham into a yarn and then embroidering into a garment that was exposed during the different events where we could actually collect the different testimony of the community. This project was also to talk about the simple fact of talking about heritage and which heritage we choose to celebrate. The fact that, for example, the hairdressers were like hub of culture of British immigration coming into UK, participating of the economy of the UK, but therefore not considered to be strong enough to stay on the high street and displaced, and removing this kind of history and heritage outside the streets to celebrate another heritage, which was the Victorian building, which is part of the stage, like the building of the station, and then actually removing all the different diversity outside the station of Peckham. So this project led me to also become familiar with the work of Tina Camp, looking at the idea of what kind of future we want to design and how designers can participate to it, and also led me to my new project I'm going to show you. So the last project I'm going to show is Afro Hair Futurity, as I said, inspired by the work of Tina Camp, and was actually displayed during the design week in 2020 in Eindhoven in the MU hybrid space, which is an art museum, like an art gallery, which is really working about performance art. The whole exhibition was called Self-Design Academy because they were looking at how today we have tools such as like self-design tool, open source tool like tutorial to actually reshape our identity. For this project, I worked with different crafts such as crochet, needle felting, or knitting to create 3 crowns. And those 3 crowns were talking about the same idea of futurity. Again, looking at like Afro hair narrative outside the white gaze and the traumas to talk about, like what would be this kind of space that we can create for Afro hair after post-COVID, but also post George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd in America. So I was really thinking about how we could actually use this space to talk about this new narrative. The installation was like 3 crown on a stool, on the podium, and then with 3 sound showers, diffusing 3 podcasts made in collaboration with anthropologists, tricologists, I work with local artists, historian, again looking at like the Afro hair history outside the white gaze, and again talking about the futurity, how Afro hair could have its own space. And I'm gonna finish on a quote of Tina Camp that actually was also part of one of the podcasts. Thank you. Should I stop sharing?
Can you hear me, Alix?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. So, I'll just start by saying this was an incredible presentation. I think it has woven together so many of the themes that are not only in the exhibition with how global so many of these issues are and how they resonate across different spaces and time periods, but even with the variety of fields that were represented here in the symposium, from professionals to schools to... So I'm really intrigued to hear what questions we have for you.
I would like to know, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, yes, I'm actually a licensed cosmetologist, so I have 2 questions. One about the collection of the hair to make the jackets, like how did you guys go about collecting all of that hair and deciding like which hair textures to use? And then number 2, the stylist in the hair salons, the white guy talked about the difference between Afro hair design compared to what he does. So in the UK, do they teach both to Afro hair design to the white stylists? Does it cross over to both?
Okay, so for the first question, so the hair, it's really quite interesting because when I started using human hair, not a lot of designers were using it, and people were giving me the hair. So I would go around hairdressers and, you know, like asking them if I could collect trim hair. And because basically it's almost like you have almost like quite a silent, they were telling me it's a silent contract where you get your hair trimmed, nobody really care about what's happening to the trim hair. So they would give it to me without any question. And part of this collection, the hair matters, but we're actually looking at all the different diversity of hair. So I collected all different, I mean, as much diversity of hair I could find in Eindhoven, which is not the most diverse town in Netherlands. But I found different hair, and I actually adapted every textile craft to each hair type, making sure that I don't damage the hair or don't alter it, and making the most of the quality and structure of each hair, and also giving space for each hair statement and hair type and hair textures. For the second question, really interesting question, because at the moment I'm working with a salon in the UK, which is talking about the fact that most of the hairdressers in the UK are not being trained with curly and afro hair type hair. They're often only required to work with straight hair, which makes, again, a lot of problem when it comes to people living in a rural part of UK, coming to Peckham, especially to get their hair done, because they cannot find hairdressers who are able to trim or just treat or style the hair. So there's a really big disparity in London, and today there's a new law that will force hairdressers to have curly hair and afro hair part of their curriculum. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Hi, Alix. This is Dr. Tameka Ellington. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You? And you?
Good, good. I think it's interesting that you are allowed to just collect the hair and nobody, you know, really mentioned much about it. In the United States, hair is very a superstitious kind of aspect, and people are very protective of their hair, even the hair that's been trimmed. In the Black culture in the United States, most of the time when Black people's hair is cut, oftentimes we will dispose of it by burning the hair, or we'll do something else so that people won't have access to it because of a lot of sacred, taboo types of voodoo and hoodoo things that we've learned over time. I think it's just really interesting that you were just allowed to just get the hair and it was not a problem. I think it's a cultural thing. You know, I think it's a cultural thing that makes our culture a little bit different. Did you have something else you wanted to say, LaDosha? Okay.
I was like, how was she able to get all of that hair? Because in America, they would never part. You know, in America, they would never part with that hair. So I'm sitting here next to my sister, and I was like, how was she able to get all of that hair?
Yeah. What do you guys, okay, so LaDosha, she says she's a cosmetologist. So what do you all do in the salon with the hair?
So, believe it or not, the children collect their own hair. They like to keep it in like envelopes, and as they age, the adults, they want to see the hair first that you're cutting off the floor, off their hair. They literally look on the floor. They want to see how much is off. Two, don't touch them with the broom with the hair, and then you have to discard it separately so they don't. It's very different. That's why I turned to my sister and I was like, how did she get all that hair?
But saying that, the fact is that I had a lot of problem to collect afro hair. Not the same, because I'm from the West Indies, and actually it's really similar. Many times hair, when it's cut, is cut out of, you know, trimmed hair. People actually collect it and discard it in a separate way, like as you said, burning. But the fact is, like, when I went to barbers, they were much more actually quite like relaxed about it. They were like, yeah, you can take the afro hair. So, but I had barbers actually who were collecting hair, asking authorization to the owner of the hair, making sure that they knew where it was going. And many of them actually asked me to see what I've done with it. So it was also, I had to be really transparent about it. The same way with the project I've done with the one in Hair by Hood. We collected hair from Peckham, and we had to actually make sure that the hairdressers were aware of what we're doing, and we actually made sure that the hair was really treated in a really lot of respect.
I just want to commend again the notion of how you've integrated gentrification into this as such a central process. I think, it's the fact that if these kinds of businesses can't operate in Peckham, in 5 years from now, but you put up the architectural rendering of the dream space, but it does include its heritage, but it's not the heritage of different communities who have already established themselves in Peckham. I think this is so universal and so applicable, and I just, if you don't mind dropping the link to the film in the chat, I can make sure that's available to everyone here.
Yeah, of course, I will. I'll do it now. But interesting enough, it's also the fact that I'm teaching in university, and some students refer to me to the fact that, working with, being a hairdresser, Afro hairdresser, is often seen as like not professional enough. So I think it's also the fact that the council was projecting this on the hairdresser, that they were not a suitable business to stay on the high street, and they were not fitting the standard of what we imagine of progress. They were also seen as like something from the past. There was something that, was kind of like, disturbing because as one of the hairdressers talk about those youth, like the young people coming in, hanging out, this whole idea of like having a large group of like black people in the high streets, and then you knew Habitant coming in not wanted to see that because there is kind of like discrimination about, like making the black bodies kind of invisible from the high street. And that was really clear talking to the council.
Wow. Thank you again so much, Alix, and thank you for joining us even with the shift in your travels and things. We really appreciated your contribution.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, we will get ready for our next presentation. I'm just going to save this link here so I can... So it looks like if you go on Vimeo, Alix Bizet's channel, Heritage.
Yeah, it is on it.
Thank you, Alix.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Nope. Just at the end of that last presentation, Tameka and I just turned to each other and we were like, this is all coming together. Like from the tech to the topics, the fact that this is an international, we have international presence here, and the technology, it's just so, and now it's recorded, right? Like the next generation of scholars and thinkers has this as a resource. So thank you all for sharing. We're so encouraged. Speaking of Dr. Tameka Ellington, Tameka Ellington has always been fascinated with the self-esteem level of black women who wear natural hair because of her own personal experiences with rejection for societal norms of beauty. She started her journey of black hair research in 2002, and today, 20 years later, ends her journey as she embarks on her entrepreneurial dreams of being a motivational speaker. Please welcome my sister, co-curator, co-symposium organizer, Dr. Ellington.
My journey into natural hair came when I was a college student. I think it was Camaron that mentioned, how once students come to the college campus, then they feel comfortable exploring a little bit more about who they are. And I remember coming to college after my freshman year, deciding that I was ready to start transitioning into my natural hair. I wasn't quite ready yet to do what we call the big chop. I wasn't ready yet to do that, but I was, trying different hairstyles that looked very quote unquote natural types of hairstyles. And then when I finally did go natural, I did do the big chop. The kinds of responses that I got, because back then, that was in '98 when I went natural, and it was not very popular back then to be natural. My whole dating life changed. There were certain men that didn't want to date me anymore because I didn't have straight hair. Even my own family didn't understand. I remember, and I'm going to just tell this because this is very relevant to the whole idea and culture about what Black women go through, especially when you're dealing with people who don't have an understanding about their hair. For many years, Black women had no idea what their hair texture was like because they wore their hair straight from such a young age, right? So some people that we're presenting yesterday were talking about how as young as 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years old, people were getting their hair straightened, right? So I was one of those people. I've had my hair straightened ever since I was about 5 years old. Never knew what my hair texture looked like until I got to college and was a college student and decided to go natural. When I went home for one of the holiday breaks, I went to stay with my mom, and my hair was natural. And I had just come out of the bathroom, getting dressed and everything. And as soon as my mother went into the bathroom after me, she comes and she's hollering down the stairs. She's like, "Come up here and clean up my sink." And I'm like, "Well, what's going on?" I did clean up the sink. Well, when I got up there, there was a couple little pieces of curly hair in the sink. My mother said to me, "Get this pubic hair out of my sink." And I said, "Pubic hair?" I was like, "This came from my head." And she just kind of looked at me like in shock. That is the epitome of what many Black women have had to go through with this lack of knowledge that we've had over time. So that immediately changed my mother's perspective, and eventually my mother ended up going natural too. But it was just this, she had to kind of evolve into herself and come into her own. I mean, like I said, there was not a lot of people going natural, and my whole life changed when I went natural. And I haven't had a chemical besides my blonde. I haven't had that in my hair, since 1998. And so Black women suffer and continue to suffer physically, emotionally, and financially because of their hair. The white Eurocentric standard of beauty remains dominant, and Black women continue to feel pressure to conform. We've also had situations where, we're taking a couple steps forward, but then we take a couple steps back. Hair discrimination is still very prevalent, and Black people are still facing being excluded from school, being excluded from work, not getting a promotion, being kicked out of places because of their hair. And these are just a few of the recent examples of people that were discriminated against because of their hair. We mentioned about high school students, and there's Maya and Deanna Cook from Massachusetts in 2017. Both of these young ladies were twins, and they were told by their school because they had braids that they could not go to prom with their braids. The research questions that I've used over time with my work has always centered around self-esteem. And so things that I've been wanting to know are, what are the level of self-esteem that Black women have of themselves and their natural hair? And in what ways have their hair self-esteem been influenced by life experiences? How does the quality of their life experience by African American women, how does it reflect their choice to wear their hair natural? And so this research that I'm going to be talking about is a research project that I did over pretty much the span of my career. I started doing research about Black hair in 2002 as a master's student at Michigan State. It was the master's thesis that I chose to use, and then as I got into my academic career, I decided to keep working on Black hair research because there was just so much more that I wanted to understand and have a better knowledge about. And so in 2003, my master's study, I ended up continuing that when I became an academic in 2012. So I collected the data from 2 different sets of samples, but I used the same type of questionnaire. So it was a qualitative study. Individual interviews were taken. The perceptions of African Americans on their natural hair questionnaire, that's a questionnaire that I developed when I was a master's student. This particular questionnaire included something called the Rosenberg Self-Esteem questionnaire, which is something that was created by Rosenberg. He's a specialist in sociology, psychology, and has done a tremendous amount of research about self-esteem. And he has this tool that many researchers across variety of fields have used in order to measure levels of self-esteem. And so I used the same questionnaire and interviewing guide, but the instrument changed a little bit based on the current literature and based on cultural transitions in the natural hair community. When I did this study, it was a purposeful sample of 25 African American women with natural hair. They were interviewed in 2003, and then in 2012, as a professional academic, I interviewed an additional 13 people. The mean age or average age of these people were 47. They had various different types of hairstyles, including locks, cropped hair, and afros. And all of the people that were a part of the study, I gave them all a pseudonym so that they could remain anonymous. As I continued on with my research, I wanted to just know more about what was happening in popular culture, what was happening in the media, what was happening in other types of studies. And so I continued with a secondary form of research by looking at online articles, magazines, blogs. That became very popular after my first set of data collection. Published research about dating apps became very popular. Some of the first research that we were able to look at was about in 2012, 2013. Dating apps started publishing research about what they were finding in regards to dating, and then, of course, looking at the media and marketing. So some of the self-esteem results that I was able to find. In their early years, women were schematic about the white standard of beauty. Basically, schematic meaning that they were very conscious of it and they felt insecure about the white standard of beauty, and they were trying their best to assimilate to that. 58% in 2012 stated yes, that they previously were afraid of what their natural hair would look like, and in the past they were trying to fit within societal beauty standards. Tara, one of the interviewees, stated that I was at a different level than when I was younger, and I agree with what society said was beautiful. Another interviewee, Elaine, she said, I fell victim to this. I thought I had bad hair. Many of the people that I interviewed felt as though they had unsupportive people in their lives, like their family wasn't supportive. They had spouses or significant others who were not supportive of their natural hair. So about 67% stated that family and others were not accepting of their natural hair. After we went natural, our mother did not speak to us for almost a month. This was Brenda and Barbara. They were sisters, and both of them decided to go natural at the same time. And what's really interesting about their story is that both of these ladies are black girls who grew up with very long hair. So they had hair past their shoulders, down their back, and Brenda in particular, when she became an adult, she still wore her hair long, she had it very straight, and she also had it very blonde. And so she rocked that blonde long hair for a very long time, and she and her sister had many conversations about going natural. She finally decided to do it, and then when she did, her mother was so upset because, of course, in her mother's mind, the hair was the crown and glory, and how dare you cut off all of this beautiful long straight hair. Her grandparents told me I looked like a pickaninny. And this is something that Iman said, and if you don't know what a pickaninny is, that's a negative term for it came from enslavement. That particular term came from enslavement, basically meaning that you're a black person that's almost like the buckwheat character, right? Buckwheat character with the little hair sticking up, that's pickaninny, okay? My husband doesn't like my hair, Ebony said. My boss told me that my natural hair was intimidating to white men and women. That's what Carla told me. So in regards to their level of self-esteem, the participants preferred their natural hair over their permed or relaxed hair. 80% of those women in 2003 stated that they preferred it, and then 90% of the women in 2012. When I asked them via the questionnaire, how would you describe the way you wear your hair? Most people responded that their hair was a way of self-acceptance. 84% in 2003 and 85% in 2012. In regards to the actual question about their level of self-esteem, on the Rosenberg self-esteem exam, I was able to find out that 68% had a high level of self-esteem, 32% had a moderate level of self-esteem. That was my 2003 sample of participants, and then 85% had high self-esteem, 15% had moderate level of self-esteem in 2012. And I theorized that that was because of what was happening with the natural hair movement. Back when I first did the study in 2003, the natural hair movement was just taking off. Not a lot of people were going natural, and if you were going natural, it still was something that you were doing in this like silo. You were the only person in your group, the only person in your family who wore natural hair. But by the time the 2012 sample rolled around, we had a whole movement going on, and the women that were wearing natural hair at this particular time could go on social media, they could go to YouTube, they could learn about how to take care of their hair. They had a whole community of people that they could talk to, might have been just online, but they had people that they could talk to about their hair. So this particular group's self-esteem level was much higher. And in their natural hair state, participants became aschematic regarding the white beauty standard. So about 83% in 2012 sample believed that women needed to have a high level of self-esteem in order to wear their hair. Lisa said, coming to grips with yourself is a brave decision. So results that I found in regards to quality of life. People were, but the sample was giving me different types of comments that were just beautiful, beautiful comments about how they felt after going natural. And Nia said just plainly, she said, it was time for me to be free. And that term free came up in a lot of people's rhetoric about what they were saying about their hair and how it made them feel they finally felt free. I want to be myself, and I want to be authentic, and health means way more to me than hair. And this natural hair allows me to swim, exercise, and be free. I grew tired of having my lifestyle fit my hair. That's what Brenda said. She was the lady that had the long blonde hair. It took a lot for her to maintain that long blonde hair, and she got to a point in her life where she was like, it's time for my life to change. Going natural was a life change for many. Participants discussed that it was also a spiritual journey for them. Carrie said that I became vegetarian about 5 years ago, and I felt that it was time for a change. So if you look at the chart, you can see that between 2003 and 2012, the data changed just a little bit, but not very much. But again, economic advantages, that was like kind of a huge difference because, again, in 2003, not a lot of people were doing natural hair. A lot of people were making products at their own home. They were, doing product. Maybe they had a friend that knew how to make shea butter products or whatever the case might be, and they would buy from their friends. But by the time 2012 rolled around, like I said, the natural hair movement was in place, and then many more people were actually able to profit from making hair products that were catered to specifically natural hair. And those hair products, as we know, were not a commodity. Those were specialized products, and they were very expensive. And so that is the reason why the data is a little bit different from 2003 to 2012. observations from some of the secondary research that I did over time. Some of the things that I learned, that quality of life is still a struggle regarding hair, and this is particularly data that's in regards to dating. So racism in dating apps, research showed that light-skinned women with long hair is still the preferred type of black woman. Or, in particular, if you look at the data, you can see that women, let me see, do we have the clicker so that I can use the laser? I don't see the clicker up here. Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, no, that's okay. Okay. Thank you, Lynnette. We had a clicker yesterday. I wonder what happened with our clicker. Thank you. Okay, do I just press the top button? Okay. So if you look at the data right here, this is women responding to men. So on the dating apps, according to Quartz is the research company that did the data research, okay? They did this data research in 2013. And so they found that women responding to men, regarding black women, almost all the time, most of the time black women wanted to date a black man. So the highest rate of response that black women had was particularly to black men. And then when you look down here at the bottom, the lowest rate of response, black women, was to white men. That was the lowest rate of response. And then when you start looking at men responding to women, black men, their highest rate of response, black men's highest rate of response was to Asian women. In regards to men, in regards to their lowest rate of response, everybody, including our black men, lowest rate of response was to black women. This is just the data, okay? Even when I match with others, I still wouldn't get a response. I'm a dark-skinned black woman, is that it? I have natural hair, and I've had natural hair a long before the natural hair movement. Could that be it? The University of California Press, they also did a research study about dating, and they found that dark-skinned women with natural hair were having difficulties with finding mates on these online dating apps. Black women still go through extremes to assimilate. When you black in Jamaica, nobody see you. So this was an article that Marie Claire, who is a lifestyle magazine, they collected some data. They wanted to find out what was going on in regards to black women still today wanting to lighten their skin and wanting to have long hair. Colorism and texturism go hand in hand, and we talked a little bit about texturism yesterday, but there are still a lot of people bleaching their skin. Bleaching the skin right now is very, very popular in the Caribbean. And it's gotten to a point where not only are they putting the cream on, but then they're taking cellophane and wrapping their bodies with cellophane to help that bleaching cream seep into their bodies. And so these people are taking drastic measures to assimilate. This particular lady in the middle, she is actually a famous dance hall queen. This is what she looked like before, and this is what she looks like now. Okay. Yeah. People are doing, and honestly, you guys all know Laverne Cox, right? When I saw this, I was so devastated. I'm like, not Laverne Cox. Laverne Cox is a trans woman. She kind of got her claim to fame when she was in the Netflix show Orange is the New Black. I used to watch it all the time. I loved it, and I loved her. And actually, she came here to Kent State and was a keynote speaker several years ago, and I got a chance to meet her. Very nice woman, but she also felt susceptible to society's standard of beauty, and she lightened her skin. Beyonce has also been said to have lightened her skin. Other actresses, black women, have lightened their skin. In regards to men, Sammy Sosa's case, the baseball player, he's probably one of the most popular known cases of men of color who have totally gone several shades lighter than what he was born with. So we still have this issue of people being brainwashed. We still have this issue of people wanting to assimilate because they don't believe that looking in the mirror they see beauty. They want to see something different in order to be considered beautiful. The new thing that we have nowadays with this lace front melt wig situation has just blown me away, and that's just me. What blows me away about it is the lengths and measures that women are going to try to make the wig look natural when it really isn't natural. They're gluing the wig to the front line of their hair. Then they're taking a hair dryer and melting the netting to make it, quote unquote, disappear so that they can make something that's not real look real. So extreme measure, in my opinion. Many black women don't exercise because of their hair. Primary care providers often don't realize that hair care can be a barrier to exercise for some black women. African American women do not comply with the recommended 30 minutes of moderate to intense aerobic activity 5 days a week, or vigorously intense aerobic activity for 20 minutes 3 days a week for health maintenance. In this sample, African American women with natural hair, we can assume that there must be other barriers to exercise outside of the maintenance of the chemically straightened hair. And this was from my sister, Afia Bilashaka, and her research partner. But black women in many cases are still not exercising. Hair is one of the reasons, but the data also shows that it could be cost of, having a membership at a gym, or family situations, or, they feel like as though they don't have, quote unquote, the time to go and take care of their bodies. When you go into the gallery, if you haven't gone already, you'll see this image, the image that I have on here, Internal Battle from Couture Ariel. When we were in the process of curating the exhibition, Dr. Joseph and I were selecting the pieces that we wanted, and I told him about this piece. And when I first saw this piece, it was actually a social media meme. And the social media meme had an arrow pointing to the one side of her hair. To one side of her hair was an arrow, to the other side of her hair was an arrow, and at the top of the social media meme, it said, "Black women before the gym and black women after the gym." So that just goes to show that, again, extreme measures are being taken and black women are not taking care of their bodies because of the fact that they've had to do all of this external activity to straighten, to the time that it takes, the amount of money that it takes. They're not willing to mess up that investment, and so they're not taking care of their bodies. Hair discrimination is still a global issue. There's numerous cases of hair discrimination in the UK against black people that have hit the headlines in recent years. Recent cases of black hair style regulation and punishment in Britain, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, and the United States reveal a deep-seated hostility between black identity, hair, and a broader society. From France to Egypt, from the United States to the Democratic Republic of Congo, women face discrimination in the streets, at school, and at work because of their natural hair is viewed as too curly or too voluminous compared to Western beauty norms. And some implications for this research, as Dr. Joseph said, Dr. Tameka is done. This is my very last research presentation that I'll be doing ever. I'm done, girl. I'm done. And so I'm hoping that the research will continue. I know that it will continue because we have amazing researchers in this room that makes me understand and know and feel better about leaving academia, that I know that the research is going to continue. But becoming aschematic regarding the white standard of beauty meant maturity, it meant growth, and it meant self-acceptance. And for many of the participants that I researched with, the mean age, like I said, was about 47. And so it would be really interesting to do this same type of study, but do it with a sample that's younger. I would love to see how younger women feel about their self-esteem. A comparative self-esteem study with women who wear natural hair versus those who wear straightened hair or wear weaves can provide data regarding levels of cultural consciousness and identity. And that's something that's very important to me as well. This level of having cultural consciousness, basically being that you're excited about, you're happy about, you're enjoy about being a Black person. And it would be really interesting to see what the data might look like in comparing women that have natural hair and those that have straight hair. As we talked about, there may not be very much of a difference, but it would still be really interesting to see what the data would say. And so, of course, there is hope. We just took 10 steps forward. Yes, yes. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, and her beautiful locks. I mean, one of our friends, Cheryl Morrow, who is the daughter of Dr. Willie Morrow. Dr. Morrow is he is the largest lender that we used for the exhibition, and his daughter is continuing on his legacy. And Cheryl Morrow published an article talking about, was it an issue for Ketanji Brown Jackson to have locks, and how it became such a thing that it really was not an issue. It was about how brilliant she was. And the fact that she has locks opens the doors for so many other people who want to wear locks in high profile places, and they haven't been able to do that in recent years. And of course, we have passed the Crown Act in the House of Representatives, and now we just need to go through the Senate, and I'm praying that that will pass through. Last night we were having conversations about it, and it's still very needed in the states. So even if our federal government passes it through the Senate and it becomes a federal law, we still need help with our states to be able to pass this in our states so that it can be enforced and become a benefit to all Black people. Thank you.
I'm sad that you aren't going to continue your research, but I definitely understand why. But excellent presentation. My question is, and I'm actually getting emotional, and I hope I can contain myself when I do my presentation, but one of the things that I noticed personally, and you gave the story about your mother, I noticed that my mom, well, me as a mother, I had a lot of influence over the decisions that my daughter made when it came to my hair. So I would love to see some data on how that impacts daughters' decisions on what they do with their hair. You know, what philosophies that the mother has, or just how she wears her hair. How does that influence what daughters will do?
That will be some interesting data. Absolutely. You have to, Dr. Afia has some data on that. Ooh, Dr. Afia. She's an amazing scholar, y'all. Y'all need to check out her research.
Hello, Dr. Ellington.
Hello.
I appreciate everything you've done. Like I told you yesterday, this is an amazing legacy. I enjoyed your presentation. Could you go back to the image, the complexions?
Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to just offer a little more insight. The image in the center of Spice, who's the dance hall artist, she still looks like how she looks.
She does?
Yes.
So, okay, so what is this just like?
So what she did 3 years ago, because she's also been featured on a show called Love and Hip Hop, Atlanta, and she intentionally did that as a photo shoot to create a conversation about skin bleaching, to talk about skin bleaching in Jamaica, to make it a story feature on Love and Hip Hop.
Oh, did she? And see, honey, I don't watch that kind of.
I know.
I don't watch that kind of stuff. So I had absolutely no idea. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for telling me that. That makes me feel better, right? That she really didn't do this, but
she loves her dark skin. She's very pleased with her figure and her face.
and see, the fact that she had to do that to make a statement, you know, says that it's a problem. It is still a problem, unfortunately. That makes me happy. Now that makes me happy.
I would like to know, how much damage does that do to your skin to do that?
Yeah, a lot of damage. There's been a lot of research also too about people who've gotten burned, you know, while they're like physically burnt, while they're bleaching their skin, either leaving the product on too long or maybe mixing the wrong kind of products together. But it does do damage. Some people do, if you have enough money, people do it professionally and they don't have as many issues, but people that are doing it at home may sometimes have problems. But yeah, it can definitely cause damage to your skin. I mean, just like any kind of chemical can cause damage to your body, right? I mean, our chemicals that we use to straighten our hair, if it's not done properly, it can cause a lot of problems, right? Absolutely. Michael Jackson is a prime example. Absolutely.
Dr. Tameka, can you tell us some strategies for caring for yourself when you're doing a research topic that's clearly so personal, right, rooted in those experiences you were talking about, but you're doing this, you've done this for 20 years. How do you balance care for yourself and your and your mind when it's such heuristic research?
You know, I think that's what makes it worth it. That's what makes the research worth it, because it's something I've experienced myself and something that I just always had this deep, burning desire to want to dismantle the societal stigma. You know, it's just been, but I think that it's important that when you do decide to do this kind of work, that you know why you're doing it, that you're doing it for the right purpose. And most of these researchers, I'm sure, are absolutely doing it also to be able to deconstruct the societal stigmas about black hair. It's just, I think that was what was able to make me so successful in what I did, is because I was so passionate about it.
Final question.
Yes, Cameron. Okay.
Quick question. I saw that the mean age was 47.
Yes.
In your study.
Yes.
And I'm just interested in the continuum of this black hair movement, because in the 60s we saw it. It may not have been as pervasive as it is now, but we did see it in the 60s on college campuses.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and look at my college yearbook in the 60s, we all have our fists raised, and the bigger my afro got, the shorter my dashiki was. So we do know that there was a hair movement on college campuses. And then it's sort of an intermittent, so you had this movement there, which was more politically based. And then there was a separation, it diverged in some way. And then we come back to it again with your study. You see it back again with your study for a different reason, I think.
Yes.
I think this one is more beauty driven,
whereas
the other one was more political.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested that when you did your study, did you consider looking back historically at what was happening in the 60s and 70s from a political perspective and hair?
Not for the research that I've done, because learning about black women and culture from a self-esteem point of view. So when you're doing that, it calls for you having to use people to talk to people about that. And so that's always been something that has been critical for me to understand, because I've dealt with self-esteem issues because of the fact that I was told as a black woman that I had nappy hair and that I wasn't pretty, or that I was pretty for a brown-skinned girl. I had self-esteem issues. I wanted to find out what other women's self-esteem issues were. And so, no, I never did. But there are many researchers that have gone and looked at the historical data. And I do believe that the movement in the 60s and 70s, in regards to hair was just a component of it. But I think that it became politicized because of what they were doing. But today, in many cases, women are doing the natural hair thing because it is a means of self-acceptance, but then also too, it's a way for them to learn more about themselves. I did another study a couple years ago where I looked at social media to find out what types of messages were actually on, like in social media. And so there were a lot of educational messages because, like I said before, many Black women never saw what their natural hair looked like because they wore perm for pretty much their whole life. And so there was a lot of women on social media that were educating people. Then there were a lot of support groups. There were support groups all across the nation that were specifically just for natural hair. And then also too, there were a lot of beauty, blogs and vlogs that were coming out because people needed to know how to style their hair, So, but Cameron had the last question, I believe.
And I'll just say, this also reminds me of Dr. Taylor's talk yesterday with the different motivations.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering if there is any research on how women wear their hair and the type of men that they relate to. And I ask that because when I've been out and about, when I have locks versus when I have on a wig perhaps, or when I have braids, or when I had, my fro, I got hit on by different people.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so it was interesting to like see that difference. So I wonder if there's any research to explain what that looks like.
There is data out there that talks about that. The study from University of California, they, in some of the responses, they talked about how the women were getting hit on by what they call these hotep men, like men that were very naturalistic, men that had locks, men that loved, Black self-expression and that kind of thing. And I actually noticed that, but I noticed it when I first went natural in 2000 or in 1998 when I first went natural. I'm telling you, many Black brothers did not want to date me because of my hair. I actually got called, and back then, because it was so uncommon to see Black women with short hair, I got called gay, got called all kind of names, I'm telling you. So, LaDosha, we're gonna close out with you. One last question, and then we got to go.
Because I find this research very interesting, and I'm gonna talk about mine when I do my presentation, but I'm just wondering, where did you have a demographics of where you selected your your subjects from? Because when I grew up, like I said, my sister's sitting right here next to me. This is not our reality. Like, I grew up in the projects, and I'm just so like, where did they come from?
The first set of data that I collected in 2003, many of those participants came from, I was in Michigan at Michigan State, so many of those individuals lived in the Lansing area. I had put up flyers like at the local library, and people were coming that way. And then I also, at that time in my life, I was wearing locks, and I had a loctician, and I gave my loctician one of my flyers, and she put it up, and then some of her clients came to talk to me. In 2012, many of the people that I talked to were actually colleagues of mine on campus that wear natural hair. So I had some students, and then I had some of my colleagues that are faculty and staff here that wear natural hair. Yep, you're welcome.
Gonna dismiss us to lunch?
Absolutely. So we have out in the parking lot once more, we have the food truck. So if you all want to go and enjoy that. For those of you that are presenters, we'll give you a blue ticket again. We need to go pick those up, and then we can give that to you so that you can get your lunch. We'll be resuming back here at 1:30 for our next presentation.